Hello to all our viewers. My name is Anna Maria Villa. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. First, we have retired U.S. Navy Hospital Corpsman Joe Doc Worley, who served as a platoon medic with the Marines in Fallujah in Iraq and was injured on duty in 2004. He is a two-time graduate of America's VetDogs and is here with Galaxie, his yellow lab service dog. And he's going to tell us about his experience and the program. Jaimie McGrade, who is Associate Director of Development at the Guide Dog Foundation for the Blind and America's VetDogs in Smithtown, will also do a presentation. And then we have Mary Naccarato, who is our First Lady of the New York State Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America, and is also the chairperson of its Gift of Sight Committee. And then, of course, we have our President, Anthony Naccarato, and he is President of the New York State Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America. So at this time, I would like to pass the microphone over to Anthony Naccarato, President. Would you like to take over from here?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. The Sons and Daughters of Italy in America is a fraternal organization of Italian Americans. And we have the main function is to share our common heritage, but we also have a big part in charities. Charities is a big part of everything that we do. The Gift of Sight Committee has been a part of the Order Sons and Daughters of Italy in America for many years. Years ago, we used to bring young Italian children into America to have eye surgery that was not available in Italy at the time. But as the Italian medical the system advanced, that there's no such need anymore. The Italians can take care of their own such operations. But we've always been involved in the Gift of Sight to help a variety of people. And over the years, we have done many things, and I will leave that up to my wife. But I just want everyone to know that it is my great pleasure today to be part of this program. But today is not about me. Today it's about Joe Worley and the America's Vet Dog. So welcome everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this wonderful performance. I would just like to invite my wife, Mary. She's the First Lady of the state and also the chairperson for she has been for 4 years, of the Gift of Sight. Mary?
Yes, thank you, Tony. I'd just like to say through the years we've been affiliated, like Tony said, for a long time, and we've made various donations. Recently, we were able to sponsor 2 dogs, and we had a puppy naming contest within New York State, and the lodges were able to vote for the name that they wanted. And 2 dogs were chosen. The names were Oki and Luce. Tony can say the name Oki better, which means eyes in Italian. How do you say it correctly, Tony?
Okay.
Okay. So the biggest donation was last year. We were able to donate $25,000 to be a fleet sponsor, and that enabled us to have our Sons of Italy logo and the Gift of Sight logo on the van for the life of the van. So that we're very proud of. And that's it for now. I'd like to let Jaimie McGrade continue with our program. And thank you for putting this together, Tony, Anna Maria, and Jaimie. And Joe, you're the star. Thank you.
Certainly is. Thank you so much, Mary. I'm actually going to share my screen if you'll all bear with me 1 second. I think Anna Maria has to give me the ability to do that again. There we go. And here we are. Okay. Fantastic. Well, everyone, I'm just so delighted to have the opportunity to speak with all of you, to really personally thank the Sons of Italy and the Gift of Sight Foundation for their numerous years of generously donating to our organizations. We really cannot thank you all enough for your support. I think it's important for me to share that our organization is actually having an anniversary The Guide Dog Foundation is celebrating 75 years of providing both veterans and civilians with visual impairments with guide dogs. And the truth is we consider this anniversary a very big deal, and we intend to celebrate it all year long. America's VetDogs began in 2003 as a special project under the Guide Dog Foundation name, and it became its own nonprofit in 2006, providing service dogs free of charge to veterans and first responders with disabilities. We breed, raise, and train our own puppies, instruct on their use, and we provide a lifetime of aftercare support free of charge for both the active team of veteran, handler, and service dogs. And through our programs, hundreds of service dogs have come about.
I just want to say, Jaimie, you look great for 75.
Why, thank you. Thank you so much. It comes at a cost. It costs over $50,000 to breed, raise, and train one of these dogs. And all the funding comes from the generosity of individual donors, foundations, corporations, service clubs, like the Gift of Sight, Sons of Italy, and also events that we're able to host throughout the year. And I don't have to tell all of you that this past year has been interesting because there have been no in-person events. The world has pretty much gone virtual, and we're just slowly starting to come about now. So we're happy to do that. So just to give you a little bit of background on how this process works, it all starts with a puppy, and who doesn't want to talk about puppies? I mean, it's the best thing ever. So we breed our puppies, and they're born at the Guide Dog Foundation, and we are located in Smithtown, New York. We're a national nonprofit organization, and we breed labs, goldens. We do lab golden crosses, and we have poodles, standard poodles for those that have, major allergies. And at 8 weeks, they leave our premises and they go live with a volunteer puppy raiser. And a volunteer puppy raiser is teaching them all the basic skills, training, obedience that's needed into shaping them into a future assistance dog. And they are bringing them pretty much everywhere. They're taking them to the grocery store, to the soccer fields, to the restaurants. All of this is extremely important into shaping them into what they will be once they have their career down the road. And with the service dogs specifically through the America's VetDogs program, we have a strong connection with multiple prisons where inmates actually are given this opportunity. They're screened for an opportunity to raise puppies behind prison program walls and do all the things that I mentioned that the volunteer puppy raiser is doing. And they're doing that Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, the puppy is leaving prison for the weekend and going on an adventure with a volunteer weekend puppy raiser and doing those outside prison program walls exposure, which is so important into, shaping them. And then at 16 months of age, somewhere around 16 months of age, they come back to New York, to Smithtown, where they enter college, or I refer to it as college, and most refer to it as in for training. And they're working with our trainers on fine-tuning certain skills that are needed to match the puppy to the right applicants. And so really, we know ahead of time who is getting who. We have already reviewed the application, and we know what the disability for that veteran is. And that dog is being trained to specifically mitigate whatever the disability is prior to the veteran student coming to campus.
So it's
So
all
what we like
custom
to
training.
say, it is custom
Yeah.
training, Joe. You're absolutely right. And it's all of these dogs are placed before the age of 2. Under normal times, pre-pandemic, veterans are coming and they're staying with us for 10 days. And they are provided the transportation, the meals, the on-class boarding, you name it, and receiving training. And then when they leave our campus, they're leaving with their new service dog.
And I want to say the prison programs having decreased the amount of training time it takes because they do such a great job in the prisons. They can spend more time working with the dogs. For instance, Benjamin was over 2 when I got him, and Galaxie was just 18 months. And I think they were even waiting on me for a few weeks there. He was ready to go. So the prison programs are just outstanding.
Wow.
Yeah, it's definitely a win-win-win. We say, you know, it's great for us because we're getting volunteers, and the puppies thrive. They thrive in prison because puppies are like children, and they love structure. They love to know when they're going to eat, and they love to know, you know, when they're going to go out for a break, and they love to know when it's nap time. So all of that, you know, works very well for us. One of the things that I think is very important to mention is that our organization, America's VetDogs, was the organization that placed George H.W. Bush with service dog Sully H.W. Bush, prior to his demise. And I will never forget our service dog program training manager run through the halls at the Guide Dog Foundation campus to announce that the president wanted our dog. And I thought to myself, the president wanted our dog? What president? And then realized it was, you know, George H.W. Bush, who is a veteran. And how lucky for us that of all the service dog schools across the country, we were chosen. And we were so grateful for that opportunity to do so. And one of the things that George H.W. wanted for Sully was, you know, he knew that he, might not last forever, and that perhaps the dog would have a lot more life and love to give. And therefore, we knew that we would have another place for Sully. And the Sully H.W. Bush is now at Walter Reed Military Medical Center, and he's helping many veterans in need of having some service dog love and attention. So it is a wonderful thing. So Sully is iconic for us. We do have a statue of Sully placed at the Presidential Library, which is in Texas. And we were excited to get a replica of this statue placed in our campus in Smithtown. And the statue was created by Susan Bahari. And if anyone would love to tour our campus and see the statue, you know, we absolutely can make that happen for you, because it is worth seeing. And so as Mary was...
Jaimie, if I can interrupt you, I just want to mention something. It was very nice of you and your organization to celebrate my birth 75 years ago by starting this organization.
You're very welcome. Happy birthday.
I wasn't aware of that. You know, I was born in March of 46. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Always happy to do that for you, Tony. Thank
Anytime.
You. Anytime is right. So as Mary was saying earlier, you know, they have, your organization has sponsored 2 dogs for us over the years, and most recently sponsored this van. And so this is a replica of the logos on our vehicle. And, you know, again, we really cannot thank you enough. I am not sure if Mary knows this, but in total, on record, $122,000 has been given by your organization, which is definitely worth celebrating right there.
Thank you for letting me know.
Great.
Great.
And this is us most recently in front of the van itself with our president, John Miller. He is president of both the Guide Dog Foundation and America's VetDogs. So it looks really good. And at this time, I'd like to bring Joe really into the loop here, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you have a better view of Joe and, of course, service dog Galaxie.
He's
So
my little
Joe,
buddy.
I'm going to ask you to share a little bit, you know, for instance, you know, when did you decide to serve in the military? Maybe you can start by sharing that with us.
You know, I think that a lot of people are interested in the military, especially, you know, young guys. We like to run around and play with fake guns, and, you know, cowboys and Indians turns into Army and Marines. And I think that was something for me that never really went away. I always thoroughly have loved my country despite its flaws. I've always looked at the strengths and realized that, you know, I wanted to be a part of one of the things that makes America what it is, and that's being involved with other Americans, and, you know, being able to meet people all over the world. And so between that and you know, being interested in going into you know, school and things of that nature, it was an avenue for me to meet those goals. I was married.
How old were you?
I was 22. I was 22 when I went in. So, this was, I went in 2003. And so this was right after, obviously, everything had happened with 9/11. And so I think that sort of internal desire to be a part of something bigger was obviously brought to the forefront of everyone's mind again, during 9/11. And I talked it over with my wife. I had a friend of mine and my brother-in-law were all going in at the same time. And my brother-in-law went in the Air Force. I went into the Navy and ended up with the Marines anyway as a corpsman, as a medic. And then my my buddy went Army. So we ended up covering all four branches between the three of us. It seems crazy. We all went in around the same time in the same year and just didn't go into the same branches. We all had different goals, and my goal was to see a little bit of the world and get into school, and I got to see a little bit of the world. Ended up.
You were a baby, 22. My goodness.
I know. And the pictures reflect that. I do look like a very small child.
I don't know. You're 6'3", Joe. I wouldn't consider you small, but okay.
Well, you put a baby face on a 6'3" guy, and it's about what all the pictures seem to look like. So yeah. So I ended up going into the Navy, and the two jobs that I was interested in actually was K9MP, and I don't know if I've ever even told you that, Jaimie. Like you said, every time I tell my story, I remember little tidbits of things, but. My choices were that I was interested in. They tried because I test well. I test better than I am. I'm not as smart as I test. So I knew better than to let them put me on a nuke somewhere trying to do brain stuff, because they would have severely regretted that. My test results do not reflect my capability. And so the things that I wanted to do were a corpsman, like a medic, because I know the job is sort of all over the place. And then K9MP because I love animals.
So listen, I know you a long time, Joe. We've traveled to conventions together and such. And I know you were injured while you were serving. I don't know, can you share how you were injured and really what your injuries are?
Absolutely. So I went into the Navy, went straight through the pipeline of the Navy. Through Corps School to Field Medical Service School, or basic training, of course, and then Corps School, and then Field Medical Service School. What Field Medical Service School is it teaches you how to work with Marines. So you learn about Marine patrols, you learn about the life of a Marine. It's almost like a mini medically oriented basic training for Marines. And so once I got on the other side of that, and this all took place. Initially, basic training in Corps School took place in Chicago, Great Lakes, or Great Mistakes, as some people say. And then we actually drove all the way over to California. And somewhere along the ride, we're not sure exactly how it happened, my wife ended up pregnant. And so, yeah, it's the weirdest thing. And so she was about 5 months pregnant when I initially deployed. But we had thought
Joe,
that
I don't know what you're saying right now.
Am I breaking
up?
You're
not accusing her of anything. No.
Oh yeah, it was a malicious pregnancy if I've ever seen one. No, she's fantastic, and part of the things that we talked about when we went in is that she would do what she wanted to do. And the reason why is I know that the military life was going to be tough on her. Of course, no one really knows until you do it. And so having said that, we went into it with a very open mind of allowing her that if she wanted to stay home and take care of the kids, she could do that. If she wanted to work or go to school, I'd do whatever. I wanted her to be happy with the difficulty of what we were trying to do. And so as a family, we made the decision. She was, pregnant when we were getting ready to deploy. I was under the impression that I was going to be home for the birth of my oldest child, my first child. And then they moved me from 3-1 to 2-1. And so the deployment difference was September of 2004 versus March 1st of 2004. So my daughter was due in June. And so once I got the notification that I would be leaving, things got a little rough, not in the marriage, just trying to get everything ready and making sure she had the support and everything that she needed. I deployed with 2-1 Marines, went over to Fallujah, Iraq in 2004. And if you were watching the news or not living under a rock, I think that, you know, we all know how tough that went. And we had a very, very rough deployment over there.
So, okay, so what, your injury itself, when
Yeah.
exactly did that occur?
So, like I said, we got there early March. We did the first assault on Fallujah. We ended up staying in the city for about 8 weeks, 7-8 weeks. We ended up having multiple situations, combat experience. You know, that it's hard to have something like that that's so life-defining, that's hard to put on a resume. Like, I've literally been shot at. Like, I feel like that would be something that'd be interesting to read on a resume. But you know, here we are, basically all becoming men, and having to take all these things that we've learned and put into action, and to be able to try to learn from these experiences, these crazy things we're going through. We ended up losing our first guy on the 26th. His name is Leroy Sandoval, and he passed away and was awarded his citizenship posthumously, as he absolutely should have been. They took good care of him and his family. And then on Labor Day of 2004, I ended up having most of my second squad get killed with a suicide bomber that drove up beside a 7-ton truck and self-detonated. I didn't get injured in that blast. I jumped out, went running up to try to help. As a corpsman, it's a nightmare to try to do anything mass casualty. It's just something you pray you never have to deal with. And we ended up losing multiple Marines and even some of the Swanee Iraqi Special Forces guys that we were working with. After that day, we had 11 days of downtime, and they deemed my platoon combat ineffective, which meant that we didn't have enough people to continue fighting. And that was a blow to morale, obviously, on top of everything that we're dealing with, because you just kind of want to finish it out, finish what you started. And so 11 days after that, we went out for what was probably going to be one of the last 2 or 3 times that we went out. They knew that they split us up between 1st and 2nd platoon. They didn't want us all together because they didn't, you know, they know that it's just a dangerous thing to have all these people that are all hurting in the same place. So they were smart. They spread us out. And I remember that morning I chose food over getting all my gear ready. So I actually had my 9mm on my hip. That was one of, out of the entire deployment, maybe 10 days total, that I ever had my 9mm on my hip. I always put it up here because I had so much other gear as a corpsman. I was carrying everything from IV bags and just loads of gear. And so that plays in later, because once we get to our forward spot, it's about a 45-minute drive. We didn't have good communication with battalion, which means that had we gotten in trouble, we could not have called for help from anyone outside of our immediate range. And that's obviously unacceptable. So we were working on getting the radio fixed, and the lieutenant was obviously very high strung. And we finally got the radio fixed, and we got a call from one of our forward spots that somebody had cut open the back of their calf and needed a corpsman to come help. And I volunteered to get away from the high tense situation that we had just found ourselves in, that we had solved with the radio, and went out there and realized that we were going to have to take him back and sew him up. The back of his leg was cut open and it was razor clean, which means that any amount of pressure on it was going to make it worse. So we all load up into Humvees, and with our interpreter, who wanted to go back to base to grab something, and the first vehicle in our convoy gets hit with an IED, which of course stands for improvised explosive device. I was in the last vehicle, and I just remember feeling the reverb of it, because I was looking behind us, and just pit of the stomach. I can't describe the feeling, and I hope you never get it. I hope that anyone that's listening never has to go through anything like that. Having said that, I knew that my job was to jump out and go to try to help. And so I jump out of the last vehicle. I go running up there to try to help. And the first vehicle had come up and landed on its on 2 wheels on one side and had bounced back down. and I had rolled to a stop, and I jump out and go running up to try to help. I get between the second vehicle and the first vehicle, and I got hit myself on foot with another IED. I remember going up in the air. I remember hitting the ground. I remember just sort of the white noise of not being able to hear anything. My ears were ringing, and I remember thinking that I was going to die. I'm not pessimistic. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm optimistic, and to the point of folly at times. Having said that, logically, I could only assume that I was going to die. I just didn't know how I could live through something like that. The thing is about corpsmen, and is about medics in general, is that it's not that medical things aren't gross. Seeing things that you see, it's of course it has an effect on you, but the curiosity outweighs that. And even in my own case with my own injury, I needed to see. I wanted to see what had happened. So I remember rolling over and looking down and realizing my left leg has been all but traumatically amputated. My right leg was just covered in blood. I assumed that it was injured as well. And I remember reaching in my right cargo pocket and for my tourniquet, and found a pin. My daughter had been born about 3 months before, and my wife sent me a pin that had her face on it, little dark hair and beautiful brown eyes. And I didn't even pull it out of my pocket because I didn't want to lose it, but just touching it sort of grounded me and pulled me back, back to earth, I guess, in some ways.
Wow.
So, even in that moment, she was making a difference for me. She was grounding me. She was giving me one of the reasons that I needed to push. And I was able to get a tourniquet on, which was god awful. The tourniquet was more painful than the explosion. The explosion feels like a huge puff of air, and then all the blood in your body is rushing back towards the front of your body. So it's almost like your leg waking up when you've been sitting in one place for too long, except for it's your whole body. The tourniquet was easily worse than that. As big as I am,
The pin was the turning point, though, for you. Sorry to interrupt you, but
say again.
Like you said that when the blast happened, that you thought that this was it. You were going to die, and then you reached for your tourniquet and you felt that pin, and that sort of, like you said, grounded you. Mm-hmm. That was the turning point. Like, let me see if I can save myself.
Yeah, and part of it was more, it just cleaned my brain of all the static. And so, I never wanted to give up. I never thought that I should just let it happen. Actively thought that. But I thought, what was the point? Until I reached in there and I felt that, and I was like, you know what, I can do this. I can put a tourniquet on. I can do the pressure dressings. So I was able to put the tourniquet on. I was able to put a pressure dressing on my right knee. I shot myself up with morphine, which basically did nothing. I thought it would do a lot more. You're talking to somebody who'd never been drunk before in his life and still hasn't. So I was thinking that the morphine was just going to send me to the moon. That is unfortunately not the case. It didn't help much with the pain.
Were they able to get you medical attention quickly, or were you waiting a long time?
So one cool thing that has happened, and one of the many, many things that Vietnam veterans have done for us, is that we have the introduction of this thing called the golden hour. So a lot of these Vietnam medics and corpsmen came back and were like, if there was a way to get somebody in front of a surgeon in an hour, they'll live. We really believe that, because so many of their things are things that we don't have the capacity to work on. And so now there's this thing called the golden hour, and it trumps every other thing, other than, obviously, you can't land a helicopter in a place where it's absolutely going to get shot down. But barring a dangerous obstacle of that nature, the goal is to get somebody in front of a doctor in an hour. So I did my own initial assessment and let them know, I know I don't have long. I've lost too much blood. I don't know how much of a femoral bleed. You can die from a femoral bleed in 40 seconds. And I don't know how much blood I really lost. It's impossible. You could take a cup of water and pour it on the ground, and you can take a gallon of water and pour it on the ground, and at a glance you really can't tell how much water is there. And it's the same way with blood. I knew I needed to get back, and so they were able to get me probably right on the nose of an hour, but that's probably only because it took about 45 minutes, 40 minutes to drive back. So yeah, they did get me help. I did, and it's funny, as I get pulled into the tent where the surgeons are, I see some of the two of the ladies that I was in core school together, and everybody's going to cut my pants off, and for me it was just kind of ironic that I was, sort of like modest in this moment where but I guess I wasn't modest. I guess I thought it was funny because I wasn't modest, because it didn't really matter anymore. Just the whole situation. If you know me, everything's funny. So for me, that was, just sort of an ironic, a situation for me.
So I know that you've had, many surgeries, and your rehabilitation was such a long time. Let's fast forward a bit. When did you realize maybe a service dog, would help you, or did somebody perhaps, I guess, tell you about America's Vet Dogs, or did
So
you do
actually,
research?
I had this. I want to preface this by saying I have an amazing support system. My wife came up. I never in a moment doubted her. That's not something that anybody can say in the situation that we were in. I had a daughter, this new beautiful thing to live for. I'll never forget, I was sitting in the hospital before I got to meet her, because they flew me during the evac to Baghdad, to Balad, to Langstuhl, Germany, all the way over to Bethesda, Maryland. And I remember sitting in the hospital, and I was soaking my hands trying to get the dried blood out from under my fingernails, because I didn't want to hold this brand new baby with blood on my hands. And I was really introspective about the whole situation. I had only had one of my Marines live that was in the first vehicle. I knew that I couldn't get to the vehicle after I got hurt, because as soon as I started moving, I knew that I was going to die if I kept trying. And my pistol that I kept on my chest all the time, that was on my hip that day, was busted in 6 pieces. So for me, and I don't put this on anyone else, I was in the middle of a spiritual situation. You can't go through the things that I've been through and not look at the big picture. And so I was trying to figure out and focus on who I was. And in that moment where I'm soaking my hands in the hospital, I'll never forget it. I realized that I needed to take that person that had been in war and had seen these things, and this new dad and husband, I was going to have to make that work together. I can't separate the two. I can't pull those things apart. And so once I started trying to recover and worked with my daughter and my amazing wife, and my mom stopped working and came up to help with the kid, with baby Abby, I realized that I wasn't at my best, and I didn't know what to do about it. I remember going on a veterans trip. I'd gotten to a point where I was not depressed. I was just not pushing. I had stopped pushing at any aspect of my life. I had gained a bunch of weight. I was up to about 270 pounds. And I was mentally and physically letting myself slip and go. And I went on a veterans trip, and there was an occupational therapist, Mary, you mentioned that earlier, by the name of Harvey, that works at Walter Reed Hospital, who had a dog, a chocolate lab by the name of Deuce. Dog's running around just doing chocolate lab stuff, and he says, "Deuce, come," and the dog's entire demeanor changes. And this dog starts running through some of the tasks the dog was trained to do, things like retrieval. He went under a chair to get something. He showed that the dog was able to brace, and that right there was like, holy cow! I'm 6'3", 220 pounds. My poor wife is like Jaimie size. She's just a tiny thing, 100 pounds less than me. And so I felt awful asking her to help me all the time. I didn't want to walk because I didn't want her to have to be in a situation where she had to do more for me. I go from being the guy that does everything for everyone else to needing this kind of help, and it's humbling in a way that can hurt you. And so when I found out about that, and I saw the Mr. Deuce doing his work, I put an application in and got my first dog in the first on-campus class in 2008, Benjamin, and then went all the way back through the program in 2017 once Benjamin retired and got Mr. Galaxie here. I just scared the mess out of him.
I love Galaxie, and you know that. I've
Yeah.
seen you interact with him. Oh, but my heart with Benji, he was just such a love.
Benji was a sweetheart. Galaxie's more of a doofer. I don't have a word to describe him other than doofer. Everybody's had a dog that's just kind of like, ha ha. And that's kind of how Galaxie is. He's a sweetheart, but Benjamin he was a guy, he'd have been a lady killer. I mean, he just had that thing.
So talk about, what it's like, being a graduate, coming to New York, meeting other veterans, what is class like?
I loved class.
From your experience.
For me, it was a lot like basic training, but with dogs. So it just makes it like infinitely better and way better food because we have a chef on class. I want to give a shout out to Kevin, my guy. He likes to feed me and I like to eat. We make a great team. And so having said that, you wake up in the morning, you break the dogs, which means just you take the dog out to use the potty. And they have this great area. Even the area where the dogs go is beautiful. And then you come back in and you start classes, and they mix it up between classes and practical application. And most of the veteran things that I'd done were like, well, if the old veteran wants to sit in his room till 11 and pout himself all day while we spent $12,000 to get him out here to this beautiful ski trip, then he can do that. Not this guy. You take me on a trip, I don't want to be greedy. I'm only going to go one time. I'm not going to keep coming. And I'm going to get everything I can out of one trip, and then I'm going to let somebody else come next time. And I didn't have to do that with America's VetDogs because it was no joke. I mean, they put you through the ringer. The goal is that the dog's already trained. You're the one that needs to learn. And so the pace is pretty good. You actually go from about 7 in the morning till they say around 5 o'clock at night, but sometimes they get on a roll, they get excited. It was around 6 most nights. I thoroughly enjoyed it both times and they have a good mix of veterans and first responders and male, female, different branches, some combat, some not. And so it actually, I both classes that I've been in, I actually have friends that I still talk to from those classes. And I've
Was everything for class conducted on campus?
No, we actually, so especially the first time, I was surprised. We went all over the place. And then with Galaxie, they tried to focus on things that I didn't feel comfortable with him doing. So for instance, he didn't like walking on grates that much, and I wasn't sure how to handle that. And so really it's just immersion therapy. We just kept walking over until he didn't care anymore. And you give him a treat 2 or 3 times after walking over a grate, he'll be like, show me the grates. I'll be happy to.
Is that
You kind
because
of go
where
all
you
over the
live?
place.
Is that because where you live there are grates?
They train for everything. So for instance, the dogs are trained to go on cement and on grass, depending on where you live. I'm in Georgia. I've got 9 acres. There's just more grass than I know what to do with. But having said that, if your dog isn't used to doing both, I could end up in Atlanta somewhere and have nowhere. I'm looking for a patch of grass to break a dog would be a pain in some places, especially Phoenix. Went out of Phoenix one time. Finding grass in Phoenix that Benjamin liked back in the day wasn't fun. But Galaxie, they did a really good job of making sure that Galaxie was prepared to go potty anywhere he needs to.
Joe, I think that on behalf of each and every one of the sons and daughters of Italy in America, not in New York State alone. I don't speak for the national, but I don't think anybody will begrudge me on this. I want to thank you for your service and your sacrifice. To listen to your story, I'm absolutely flabbergasted by your attitude and your positivity. I just want to say thank you. I want to say from the bottom of my heart. I'm an old man. You're a young man, and you're so positive about the future. What keeps you so positive?
Tony, first of all, I want to say thank you. That means more to me than you know. and I'm humbled. I'm humbled by your appreciation. I'm humbled by you sitting there and listening to what this young fella's got to say. And I'm humbled to have an opportunity to take something in my life that I think we can objectively say was awful and use it, because it takes a lot of the power out of it to be able to use it for something incredible and for something that made a huge change in my life. For me, I got Benjamin and Galaxie exactly when I needed them. They were trained exactly for what I needed in that moment. And how could I not be happy and positive with that kind of support? Because America's Vet Dogs, they don't just, I sound like I'm doing a commercial. Let me just I love them. Their heart's in the right place. That's why I got involved. That's why I started volunteering in 2008. That's why I started working for them in 2015, because I see so many people that don't have the support system I have. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And my daughter is 16 now, and I'll never forget holding her in the hospital like that. I'll never, ever forget it. And I had everything I needed to succeed. And it's still the hardest thing I've ever done. I went 2 years not knowing that this program existed. I didn't want that to happen to anybody else. I've got a purpose. I went through all this for a reason. I really believe that. And I try to stay positive. Some days it's work. Sometimes it's a choice to do it. But it gets easier the more you make yourself.
What can the dog do for people in such a circumstance?
So I was actually going to ask Joe, what specifically does Galaxie do for you? But these dogs, Tony, can be trained for anything. They can be trained for nightmare interruption. There are veterans that are having nightmares, during the night, and the dog can sense that the veteran is about to go into a full-fledged nightmare. And so the dogs will nuzzle at their necks or pull the blankets off of them to break that from occurring. And we are fortunate on our campus. We went from 1 training room to now 3 in our training center. That was something positive, by the way, that came during this pandemic, that we did some updates to our training center to help with our training. And, it's really one of the most wonderful things that we can help for those who are suffering from PTSD as their primary diagnosis. But for Joe, Galaxie, I'm sure Galaxie can open doors.
Yeah.
He can pick up items that are on the floor. Joe, why don't you share some of the things that
he does? Walking and mobility. He does retrieval. He does a creative retrieval at sometimes. And he does a lot of problem solving. And what cool thing about service dogs is that they're trained to be very flexible. And so my needs are different. Some days I'm hurting. I just want to lay around and read. And as you can see, he's cool with that. And then some days I want to go crazy. I want to go see places and do things. And he wants to do that too. But he's trained to open handicap doors. He can actually pull me in a wheelchair, which was something I didn't think I would use until I was in an airport, Hartsfield, trying to reschedule a flight while going to the gate because that's how tight it was. And so, the program has grown by leaps and bounds, and they'll do follow-up training as needed. If I were to, God forbid, lose my hearing, they would happily come out and retrain to make sure that Galaxie knew how to handle that. But it's everything from hearing, nightmare interruption, physical tasks, PTSD. I've got a friend of mine who his dog is trained to work with a panic button because he lived with it by himself for a long time. And so if he were to have an episode or a heart attack or anything like that, his dog could literally call the fire department or 911 for him.
Tell me, Joe, what would you say to a young man that's 22 years old and finds himself in the situation that you were at that time?
I would say don't leave that hospital until you've made friends with some people, because you're going to need each other. I know so many guys that were in a rush to get home, and they went home to an island where they had no one to talk to and no one knew what they were going through. I would say find a purpose and find friends. You always need friends and support.
And a group therapy. Yeah.
And get involved with something. You're right, group therapy. Get involved with something that's bigger than you.
Yeah.
I got involved with America's Vet Dogs. That was a huge part of my, I guess, my spiritual recovery. I knew what to do physically. I do a lot of physical stuff. I know what to do mentally, but I needed to find something to fill that gap that was gone when I was no longer a part of something so big.
Jaimie, if I may ask you, what is the evaluative process that the veterans go through so that you can then pair them off with a particular dog? I'm sure there's a screen.
Yeah.
It's the part, you know.
Right.
needs
There
it.
is a whole application that has to be completed, and we have a whole department on campus that helps, you know, take the first call from, you know, an applicant who has questions and explains the process of that they have to go get, you know, a doctor to, you know, recommend them for such a thing. Joe, maybe you can provide, you know, your experience with the application process.
Because I'm sure in the beginning, they themselves don't know what needs they're going to have. They may
Yeah,
not-
so yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of people don't realize what they need. I didn't realize, I mean, if you had told me to go to the kennel and pick out my dog, I may not have gotten Benjamin, and it would have been a detriment to my life. They know what they're doing. And I may not have ended up with Galaxie, but luckily I had people in my corner that did that for me. The application process is a lot of them finding out what your life is like and your needs are like. They look at things like your environment, how many kids you have, and how active you are, and so all that plays in, as well as temperament of both you and the pup.
and the dog, yes.
Your stature too, Joe, right? Like if I needed an assistance dog and I'm 5 feet, you know, they probably wouldn't give me such a tall dog as they gave you.
Yeah, Galaxie's a big boy. He's a strong guy, but they knew he was going to be pulling a 220-pound guy in a wheelchair. So
Great.
And so the trainers get the applications, Mary, and, you know, they have their string of dogs in the training center. And so they're sort of reviewing what, you know, the disabilities are for each individual applicant, and then matching the right dog to that particular individual and fine tuning those skills while the dog is on campus for as little as 2 months to as long as maybe 6 months time before the veteran comes in to receive a service dog of their own. Maybe Joe, briefly, can you just share, you know, the dynamic of how these dogs have also helped your family? I know you're a dad of 3. You know, you have your lovely wife who you call her Angel. She's Angela. But also the children. You know, how do these dogs help them?
I just want to say that when I first got hurt, I wasn't able to do things like run around in the yard with my kids, and I still kind of can't. But Benjamin was able to be sort of my proxy in those situations, and that really made a difference. It took a lot of the burden off my wife having the help that I needed, both with mobility and with knowing that I could travel some and had help that I needed. But also when my kids are running around the yard and I can't goof around with them and chase them, Benjamin played that part for me, and he did it with love. And it really was a game changer for me. It meant the world. It changed the dynamics of my entire family. It really did. That's a good question.
Jaimie, I'm sorry, Anna Maria is going to put this out on YouTube, and a lot of people are going to see it from the Sons and Daughters of Italy, but it's also going to be seen by other people. Hopefully, I'm going to promote it in a variety of ways. How can they help? I know the Sons of Italy is helping, and how can they help? Obviously money must be an issue all the time.
Sure. So, yes, everybody always says, Jaimie, how can I give back? What can I do? And, first and foremost, if you're in certain parts of the country, like especially here in New York on Long Island, we're always looking for puppy raisers, which is a volunteer role. And so, it is giving of your time from 8 weeks to 16 months, as I said. But really, it is the most rewarding thing that an individual can do when you get to meet the Joes of the world who benefit so greatly from receiving an assistance dog that they need so very much. But yes, donations are important. They're vital to what we do. And, people can learn more or make a donation at donate.vetdogs.org. And we, as you know, we're always happy to recognize. We have lots of naming opportunities and different sponsorship opportunities. It's always very important to us to thank people and recognize them for their support of our program.
That's great. Anybody that's watching that, anyone at all that can be of assistance by raising a dog, I would encourage that. And you'll be helping people like Joe. And yeah. Joe, I'm just amazed by your attitude. I'm an upbeat sort of person, and when I meet somebody upbeat like you, it just makes me feel so great. Yeah, one of the things that I'm intrigued by is the commitment that people like you, Jaimie, have to such an organization. People like
That's
you,
very sweet.
I'm amazed by that, and I want to thank you for that. I want to thank Mary also, not for being the site chairperson, but for being an occupational therapist. I'm a little bit weak-hearted when it comes to watching somebody that's hurt. So for her to work 40 years in a nursing home, that it takes a special person like you, Jaimie. And Mary worked in a nursing home for 40 years, and she's seen a lot of things. So it's very important. Without people like you, without Jaimie and Joe and Mary and Anna Maria helping us right now, I am so hopeful when I right now that the world would be okay. Joe, another thing that I would like to ask you is, what do you say to a 22-year-old that's thinking about joining the service?
I'd say that they need to make sure they talk with their support system, because like I said, I think that people don't realize how much they need. But I do understand that, and I met many people that went in to get away from home. They needed a way out. I will say that just to try to pick a job that you can transcend into a civilian life later. There's loads of education opportunities in the military, and just make sure that if you go in, it's going to be heavy. Get something big out of it. It's a heavy thing. Get something heavy out of it.
I think when others see this program, they may have someone in mind that could be assisted by a dog or some type of an assistance. And you're an inspiration to all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank everyone, and we hope that our viewers enjoyed learning about Joe and Jaimie's work and the VetDogs. We hope all our viewers will support the organization, and thank you for viewing. So we're going to wrap this. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
God
much.
bless
Appreciate
everybody.
it.
Galaxie said thank you as well.